Man, welcome into the Daily Wolves podcast. We're live out here. People are joining right now. We got the music going round two for everybody, but yeah, thanks for everyone for joining. Obviously, not the game we wanted to be out here for the live. We thought we were going to be obviously covering a W, but obviously, you guys read the title before you joined up. Timberwolves are a play-in team. Andrew, they are a play-in team. They're locking it in. They're solidifying it. Congratulations to them. Hang the banner now. It's time because they have stamped it into the ground. They're challenging the Clippers for the eighth seed. I can't believe it. Good God, but they're doing their best, man. Shout out to Jalen Clark filling Gatorades up. I absolutely love it. Elite hand pouring. If you watch the way he twerks it at the angle he's at, it's just good God tier, man. But yeah, Timberwolves lose tonight. Obviously, did a lot of things wrong, Andrew. To start off with, we got people joining the live. Shout out to everyone joining. Before we get going, actually, I know the Timberwolves lost, but Head Flyer Brewing, this Friday we are releasing a beer. And if you need to get over the Timberwolves loss like myself, this is the perfect event to come to because I'll be there. The Timberwolves or the Daily Wolves team will be there. You can come drink beer. We can drink our sorrows away. I think Jalen Clark will be there because he doesn't play. So it'll be awesome. So come out for sure to Head Flyer Brewing this Friday. Ant Secret Stuff, a hazy IPA that I'm dropping with Head Flyer Brewing. It's going to be a good time. But Andrew, what'd you think of the game? Let's get your reaction, man.
Well, I mean, it's like you said, it kind of solidifies this team as a play-in team. The path to getting that 6th seed is now real stark. Like they probably before that Pacers game, they had to finish 10-3.
Mm-hmm.
They still probably need 10 wins to get to the 6th seed.
Mm-hmm.
10-1 when you have games against Detroit, Indiana, Denver, and Memphis. Still, I mean it's. This team likes to do things the hard way, but that is an impossible task. I mean, I think this is just who the Wolves are. Unfortunately, this year they are a play-in team. You look at the teams that are ahead of them, Golden State, Butler and Curry, they don't lose to these type of teams, especially a back-to-back. Denver doesn't lose these type of games. Oklahoma City doesn't lose any games, it appears. Houston's been locked in all year. It just kind of confirms that they are a play-in team, which it's disappointing, right? Because it's
Of course.
coming off of a Western Conference Finals. The Cat trade happens. And I think over the since January, people have kind of started to talk themselves back into, oh, the Wolves are back. Like they could make another run.
Yeah.
I'm not going to count them out in the playoffs because they do wake up for good teams. And if they are a play-in team, they get the 7 seed and they're matched up against Denver. I mean, who the heck knows? They might win a playoff round. But the thing that's starting to be clear is, can they win 16 playoff games? 17 with the play-in. I just don't think they can at this point. I just don't think they have that ability, which, if we're being optimists, what I do like to kind of consider is Ant is in his 5th year. I mean, if you look at Michael Jordan in his 5th year, people were saying he was a ball hog, couldn't play in the playoffs. I think that would have been the 89 season. So that was when the Pistons were still just ravaging them. You look at LeBron in his 5th year. That's when he was a year away from leaving Cleveland, I think. And it was LeBron's too passive. He's not aggressive enough. You look at Tatum in his 5th year. They made the Eastern Conference Finals. People were ragging on Tatum. I mean, it's just part of the problem of having your team built around a 23-year-old is a 23-year-old isn't going to take a game against Utah or Indiana without their starters, or tonight as serious as a Jason Tatum or 29-year-old Michael Jordan or Kobe or anyone when they're in their prime. And again, if there is a silver lining, that would be my silver lining, that 5 years from now, when Ant is 28 years old, the trajectory is still insane. It's a tough pill to swallow because this year probably isn't it.
And I think when you add these losses up, it's another thing where they're going to take a hard look at the team in the offseason and really question it, right? And I mean, it's just one of those things like they have to think about, do they have to shake up the roster? I don't know. Do you run it back? Maybe. When they had the Gobert year, it looked shaky. They ran it back. They went to the Western Conference Finals. Maybe if you run it back with Randall, maybe they can come together. It looked like they were clicking when they came back originally, but then in the last 2 games, it's like a completely different team. The passing has gone down, the assists are down. Everything looks like a disaster. The body language isn't great anymore. I mean, I was waiting for it tonight. You're at home, both these games, you're playing at home. You're just waiting for the home crowd to come in. I felt like they had numerous times where the momentum was there tonight, where they tied the game up finally. The crowd's going crazy. It's insane in there. You can feel it on TV, watching it. Probably felt it in the arena. And then there's Julius Randle setting a pick, sticking out his hip, and it's an instant foul, and it's a turnover, an offensive foul. I mean, I can't believe it. Like, it's just numerous things over and over in this game where you had chances to take the lead. You could have. I mean, Target Center would have absolutely exploded if you just scored there, and maybe you go on like a 6-7-0 run. New Orleans, you take their soul out. They were a team trying to tank tonight. They're literally trying to lose. Winning does not help them at all. They need to get a good lottery odds. So, but I mean, you give a bunch of young players like the Pelicans a chance and belief, and they're going to take it sometimes. And they did it. They took another team just like the Pacers took the souls out of the Timberwolves. I thought Jaden McDaniels had a kind of a weird game tonight. I felt like Jaden was just, I don't know where he was half the time. I mean, he had some good blocks for sure, but not scoring his usual points. Was a -13 tonight. 5 points for Jaden McDaniels. Naz Reid had a slow start to the game. Those two alone were just horrible, in my opinion, in the beginning of the game. Just awful. What'd you think of them?
I hesitate to blame it on them. To me, and
Mhm.
Christopher taking my point before I can even say it here, but to me, the ball movement was the real issue. I mean, every player on this team was playing like if they passed it, they weren't going to get the ball back.
Mhm.
Meaning
Mhm.
Ant was either going to the hole or chucking a shot. Randall wasn't really looking for teammates very much. Even like Dante, who's been great moving the ball, wasn't really looking for teammates. And when you have that type of game where it's like, if you're Jaden McDaniels and you know the ball's probably not coming to you, it's easy to kind of check out on offense. Naz Reid, I mean, he ended up closing pretty well, but people who have seen Naz Reid throughout his career know he's either really, really good or he's really, really bad. There's nothing in between. So having a bad first quarter and then kind of coming back, he also missed that 3 at the end of the game that would have kind of sealed it. But I mean, tonight, the ball movement is kind of the key of the offense to me. I
Yeah.
mean, this team is not, I mean, let's just be honest. Like Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle are not good enough by themselves to win without trusting their teammates. And
Mhm.
you got shooters, Mike, Dante, I mean, Jalen Clark. All of those guys were hitting shots tonight. Well, wasn't, but Jalen Clark. I mean, TJ Shannon was out there for like a minute, to Will's point here too.
Mm.
I think it's tough because I think they honestly really trust Jalen Clark. But at the same time, I'm not going to fault Finch for not playing them more. Like Ant, Julius, this core 8, like top 8 in the rotation, need to dig themselves out of this hole, out of these holes, and they need to win these games. And I think if Jalen plays 30 minutes in this game, they probably win it. I mean, handily. But what good does that do you in the playoffs? Like it just kind of gives Ant the excuse still, or these guys the excuse still, and they just get bailed out. Whereas now for the next 48 hours, everyone's going to be sitting here looking at Ants, looking at Jaden, looking at these guys of like, what the heck happened that you went out there, dropped one of the Pacers, talked about how you need to come in with better energy, and then dropped one to the Pelicans tonight.
So what you're saying is you think that maybe Chris Finch left some of these guys in, or even though he knew they were struggling, the veteran guys almost to maybe prove a point potentially to the team, right?
Just having talked to Chris Finch a lot this year,
Mm-hmm.
he is very much a people need to learn how to play through adversity type of mindset. And to me, especially in that third quarter, when Julius normally gets kind of subbed out at about the 8-minute mark, sometimes Ant comes out at the 10-minute mark. and he left both of those guys in. I just kind of felt like it was this is a lesson thing, not a slight to Jalen Clark. And again, like, this lesson needs to be learned. If the Wolves are up 3-1 in the playoffs, they are the perfect team to have a team come back and win it 4-3, because they let their foot off the gas.
So I'm wondering if we get to the playoffs, if they start playing like, how Denver did last year, right? Where they kind of had it all. And then, obviously Minnesota came back and won. Julius Randle, a -20 tonight. Good Lord. What are you doing, brother? We needed you to show up tonight. I thought he had a really good first quarter, and then he kind of just stopped after that. He was getting to his spots, which is like he gets that ball under the hoop on the block and kind of goes back to the free throw line in the middle and shoots that fadeaway, and he was cooking in the beginning of the game. I think he made 3 of those, and then he just kind of went away. I mean, he wasn't impactful. He couldn't stop. They couldn't stop Zion Williamson tonight at all. Nobody could. Zion did whatever he wanted to do. CJ McCollum and him had 14 points apiece in the first half. Just cooked Minnesota. McCollum was 1 for 15 last game in their blowout. 1 for 15, and tonight he just absolutely exploded against the Timberwolves tonight. Let's see what he got. 7 for 18. I guess he ended the game not so hot. 18, but 29 for Zion Williamson. Man, it was. I mean, even Jordan Hawkins for them had 13 points tonight, and he was 2 for 9 last game. So those players were killing Minnesota. And you look at the plus minuses. Jalen Clark was a +12 in the game. The next closest player was a +6. Otherwise, I mean, Minnesota was just like, Jaden McDaniels a -13, Randall a -20 again. Dante tonight -5. There was plenty of players that were just playing poorly tonight. So you're just not going to win. This guy asks, do we think that we're going to even make the playoffs now? Probably. I mean,
Yeah.
realistically, yes. I think you're a play-in team now, so you've locked it in. So now you're against the Clippers for the 7 or 8. And the important part on that is if you're the 7 seed, you get to play at Target Center for that game. If you're the 8 seed, you got to go play in LA. Luckily, honestly, Minnesota's a very good road team. I think they would honestly play better. As weird as that sounds, they'd play better if they had to go to LA as the 8 seed, because we've seen them just come home. It doesn't matter. It's like they just don't play good at home this year. And as weird as that that sounds, yeah, I think they play better on the road. What do you think, Andrew?
It sounds weird, but the team's been kind of harping that all season of like, when you're on the road. And this is like completely aside, but like a lot of the players on the team have young kids. So when you're on the road, you're not waking up with your kid. I know a lot of them credit their wives for being like awesome partners and waking up with their kids and stuff like that. But it's different when you're playing at home, right? I think the other thing is these players' routines and schedules when on the road are completely 100% controlled. You are in bed by a certain time. You are up for breakfast. You are doing treatment. You are doing practice. You're doing film. Like, everything is scheduled. Whereas when they're at home, there's a couple Call of Duty players on this team. Who knows? Maybe they get into a good win streak and they're up until 3 a.m. instead of midnight. Everyone's been there. I would agree with you though. I think they're a play-in team. I think they have at least solidified that, and they're probably going to wind up as the 7 seed. I mean, they've played the Clippers really well all season. They also hold the tiebreaker with the Clippers. So even though the Clippers are only, I think, a game behind them, it's really 2 games because the Wolves hold that tiebreaker. And now with 11 games to go, like, if the Wolves just kind of go like 7-4, 6-5, they probably eke out that spot.
I guess there's another comment here that we're going to put up on the screen for everyone. It is Chris Finch, a clutch time coach. I'm not sure if it's so much Finch as it is the players. And from what I'm seeing, I think the coaching staff can only, it's like us being parents here and telling our kids don't go out and do this, and they just do it anyway. You can only, do that so much. And I think the players just aren't really responding. I think there are plays drawn up for the players. They're not running the plays, or something breaks down. I think they're kind of hero ball. You see a lot with Ant and Julius tonight. You saw a lot of it. We saw a lot of it earlier in the year, and it's frustrating. It's frustrating, I'm sure, for the teammates as well. I'm sure when you see a play drawn up and the same guys keep trying to do it themselves, it probably makes you, put your head down in the corner because you don't get the pass or the ball doesn't move. It's kind of weird it's frustrating because they have so much talent on paper. They're one of the deepest and best teams probably on paper in the NBA, but it's just not it. And sometimes it just isn't it. And you don't have it. And that's why in these losses, the first thing I thought about at the end of the game when in the closing minutes is at the end, once it hits the summertime, I think you got to take a hard look in the mirror if you're Tim Conley and the Timberwolves and say, can we make a roster move to make this team better? If we run it back, I'm just not sure we have it. And that's tough to say. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I guess we'll find out. I don't know who that player is. I don't know what it is, but that could be it. What are your other thoughts?
For the clutch time, what I would add too is, last year the Wolves were one of the best clutch time teams in the league. And it's pretty obvious why. In the clutch last year, they inbounded the ball to Mike Conley. It was whoever was inbounding it directly to Mike Conley, and Mike Conley ran the offense. He would get someone in the action. He would run the pick and roll with Rudy. He would hit his weird floater thing. And even though it drove some fans nuts, and it even drove me nuts at sometimes, that like you're going with a 30-something-year-old point guard in playoff games for the last shot, like we are seeing this year, because Mike Conley is not as effective as that. He's not as fast as he was. He's not hitting the pull-up threes like he was. Like he's just at a different stage. But we're seeing that like this is why Finch went through Mike Conley. This is why Mike Conley's still playing late in games, because it does give like he just brings that credibility of like, if I inbound it to Mike Conley, he's going to at least run the play that I drew up. And I do think like that is something that should be put on Finch. Like there are inbounds plays where you could run it where like Dante is getting it on the first action, or in overtime against the Pacers, he ran it with Julius getting it on the first action, which then Dante came whirling around for what looked like a dribble handoff. Julius kept it and forced it too. But I do think there is some blame for Chris Finch where you can sit there and say like, you don't have to inbound it to Ant every time. But I do think a lot of the blame in these clutch time situations is on Ant. I mean, he just, whether it's immaturity, whether it's development, whether it's not trusting certain guys, you just never know. You just had Cole's point up here too on the screen about, for audio listeners, about, it almost feeling like it's a Dante versus Julius versus Ant versus McDaniels, kind of everybody kind of having different like sides on the team. And I do think there is some of that. I think it's less about like they are intentionally doing that and more about Dante and Julius have played, probably 115 games together now. And they have certain actions that they really like to run. Dante coming off of a pin down, getting a dribble handoff from Randall and launching a three, like is butter for those two. Just like Ant and Nas run a pick and fade really well. Ant and McDaniels 2-game works really well. I mean, at this point in the season, you'd like to say everyone's meshed, but it's been such a weird season that I think when the chips get pushed into the middle, the Dante Julius versus the old Wolves, quote unquote, they do kind of just fall back into what works best for them and maybe not what works best for the team. Evan, I'll let you take the next question here.
I never really thought about that, but no, that is a good point. It's interesting to see how they handle things there at the end. Who's untouchable in a trade? Wolves in 4. Put that on the screen there for everybody listening. The question again is, who on the team is untouchable in a trade? It's probably Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and Naz Reid. It's probably those 3. The Timberwolves think very highly of them in the future. They think to the future of the team. Those guys are very close best friends, not just on the court, but off the court. Jaden and Naz especially are so tight. They do everything together off the court. They're even more close than Anthony Edwards is to them. You just don't move on from a player like Naz Reid, who I know many are concerned he won't re-sign with Minnesota, but he'll be back. Minnesota knows exactly how much he means to the state of Minnesota, the franchise, to the fans. He's just an icon here, and he's still young. And you keep a young core like that together, especially after what you've seen Naz Reid get better every single year, pretty much. And now, they get to grow up together. I mean, that's huge. They came in the league basically together. So I think those three are the untouchable ones. Jaden McDaniels before the season struggling, or earlier in the year, I think you could have said Jaden could have been moved. But the way he's played over the last few months here, he's been phenomenal. He's just excellent. I mean, averaging like 18 points, 8 rebounds a game. You just don't move a player like that again, who's an all NBA defensive talent, again, who are best friends with. If you trade one of the best friends on the team, that can mess with a lot of things when your franchise players here. And he feels some type of way of that. So I think those three just don't make sense going out. They're all on, decent salaries right now as well. I mean, Anthony Edwards is obviously the only one on an insane contract right now. And Naz Reid's about to get paid what he probably deserves. I think Jaden's contract's fine for what he signed for what he's performing right now. So those three are the players I don't think you move in a trade, and those are the untouchables. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think Ant and Jaden are probably the 1 and 2. There's a little bit of pushback in the chat on Naz. All I would say with Naz, I think if he's coming back here, I think he's probably coming back here at a discount for what he would get elsewhere. Naz loves being in the city. He loves being a part of the Wolves. He wants to be here, which there is something to be said about a player that is 6th man of the year. He'd probably be a solid starter that wants to stay here. He's also, if we look at his development trajectory, every year he gets better. Naz's big issue right now is he either plays really good or he's really bad with nothing in between. And that is something that as he goes into his age 26, 27, 28-year-old seasons, hopefully that averages out and we're seeing a more consistent Naz. And to your credit, like Naz and Jaden stayed here all summer. They worked out together all summer. They were in the gym. They were at the facility. They worked out with coaching staff all summer. They both live here. They're both really good friends. Ant's really good friends with them. It's kind of like in a weird way, the same as like Kat, Levine, and Wiggins, where, they ended up trading Levine out and Butler comes in for a year and we'll never know what that team is going to look like. That being said, I mean, who knows? This is an off season where if they make the play-in and sneak in as the 7 seed, if they don't have a good series in that first round, do they look at it of like, okay, Naz, maybe he isn't the piece? And I do think like Ant and Jaden are mature enough people where if you come to them and say, hey, like we got bounced in the first round, like we gotta revamp this a little bit. I in terms of other untouchables though, I would like to at least throw out, like, I think Mike Conley's pretty much untouchable. I don't think there's any way he gets traded. I don't think there's any way he gets released or bought out or anything. The team loves him. He's a coach on the floor. Everybody on this team to a man wants to win the championship for him. He's one of their biggest motivating factors. I don't think he goes anywhere. And honestly, like they talk about Jalen Clark like he's going to be a megastar. Everybody on this team talks about him like he is something incredibly special. I think it would have to be a really good trade for them to want to get off of Jalen Clark. Other than that, though, I mean, Rudy, Dante, I think everybody else is just probably, if there's a deal out there, they're going to listen to it.
It's going to be tough, too, because the contract situations with the Wolves to pull off any kind of deal. So people listening can't get too excited. It's pretty hard right now with what the Wolves' salary is looking like. Players are on the league. There's not a ton of stars probably available right now. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of what they do. With 11 games left in the season, is there a chance we make the playoffs? I think there's still a chance. Chance got very slim after tonight. I'm not sure what's going on in the Memphis Grizzlies game, but if anybody's going to fall right now, it's probably the Grizzlies that you would hope to fall. It sounds weird to say. I don't think it's going to happen anymore. For the Timberwolves, I think they're too deep in. But yeah, I mean, I still think the playoffs is the chance. Yeah, we're going to make the playoffs. That's how I feel confidently in that. We could be wrong. Obviously, we don't know. This team has shown us that we get excited for an 8-game streak, and then here we are in this live right now. So I think firmly they get the 7th seed. I think they beat the Clippers. That's my prediction. I think that matchup's actually really good, the 7 and the 2. I don't think Minnesota fears anybody at the 2 spot. I think if it's the Rockets, it's fantastic for Minnesota. I think if it's Denver, those are probably the 2 teams that would be the 2 seed realistically. And I think those matchups are like Minnesota could take it deep. If anything, they could win that. So it'll be interesting to see them kind of where they're going to keep going. How do you think Nas feels about being the second choice to Randall while performing better than Randall this year? That's a good question. It's a good question. I think we could say in the beginning of the year, Nas Reed was playing better than Julius Randle because Randle was a disaster. But I think Randle, right before the injury, he came out and he started being a team player and he started evolving in front of our eyes. And I think Julius Randle, when he came back from his injury, he was just amazing here before these last couple games here. And I thought Randle, you got to start to see how much of like an impact Julius Randle can really make on a team and why he was an all-star player for a few years while he was a New York Knick. What'd you think, Andrew?
Yeah, this is like the super cliche answer, but like I think
Mm-hmm.
Nasri just cares about winning.
Mm-hmm.
I think like truly he's getting minutes. He's playing between 25 and 30 a game. I just
Mm-hmm.
really think Nas Reed just doesn't really care. As long as they win, I think he's pretty pumped.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when there's games where like he only gets 5 shots off and
Yeah.
he's not really involved, I think then he might feel a certain way. But like Nas Reed, for being like a super hyper competitive guy and like an uber confident guy, he really is like a team first dude. Like I think he genuinely believes it. Like as long as we win, it's good. There's a listener, Brandon, that asked if anyone would want the Rudy contract. I just want to shout that out quick. I will be writing about this in the next, probably if they get bounced in the first round, I'll be writing about it right away. But like
Mm-hmm.
before the draft, I'll be covering this. Rudy's contract is terrible. Like that extension is terrible, but there are teams out there that have matching salaries, like the Lakers, like Dallas, like even the Pelicans,
Mm-hmm.
that I think would at least kick the tires to where you're not having to like trade a first round pick out with him. But I'll be covering that in one of my articles after the season. It's realistic that somebody would be interested, especially like a Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves, and then you can add Rudy Gobert in there. Like you could see someone talking themselves into it.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could see a team like LA. They need a big, and I think they're one piece away with that team right now. There, like a big center. Mark Williams would have been incredible for them. So yeah, I think there's an interest in Gobert. I don't. It's tough because yeah, the contract's insane. It's a big contract. It's easier said than done. I think again, if Minnesota makes a trade, it realistically probably involves Julius Randle. And if any trade's going to really happen, I think Randle's kind of the odd man out. Um, I don't think when they made the trade, they were really. I think the trade was more about Dante and getting that first round pick than it was
Mm-hmm.
Julius Randle. It was getting the cat contract out of here, getting a guy who's productive, but that you can kind of rent his production for a little bit and then flip him for something. Hopefully his value goes up. Maybe he proves you wrong. You keep him. And there's still that chance. I mean, he's played great since he's came back. He could easily finish the season amazing, and we could all be eating our words. He could easily go into the playoffs because I mean, and he could be great in the playoffs. We don't know yet. Notoriously hasn't been a great playoff performer, but I guess only time will
Mm-hmm.
tell on that. I mean, Cat wasn't great in the playoffs, and then I thought he had a pretty good playoffs last year, other than the Dallas series. So, I mean, you just never know what NBA players are going to do. And I guess again, time will only tell between those guys. But I think losing these games, make Minnesota really every time they're losing now, just think they are getting closer to making a move. That is kind of where we are reaching this point right now, and it's just kind of how the NBA works sometimes. Um, I guess looking forward, you have the Pelicans again on Friday. What's kind of your prediction of really how they get the job done on Friday?
I think tonight, tomorrow, and Friday morning is probably going to suck for the Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
Finch is notoriously pretty hard on, like, not notoriously because like he doesn't talk about it a lot, but like players will talk about how hard he is on them in film sessions and practices after losses like this. So my guess is they are going to get pretty reamed out from this one. I mean, I'd love to say that they're going to come in Friday with motivation and with intensity and all that stuff. I think one thing that may have helped is Zion was talking quite a bit of trash from what I hear from people sitting close at the game. That might motivate Ant. That might motivate McDaniels. I
Mm-hmm.
do think that there was something to do with a lesson being learned with keeping Ant out there, keeping Julius out there, not playing Dante as much, not playing Clark, not going back to TJ. I do think there was like a lesson learned of, hey, you guys got to learn how to dig yourselves out of this hole if you're not going to wake up for these games. That being said, like, they got to win. This is now every game for the rest of the season is a must-win game. If they want to avoid that play-in, they got to start rattling off wins, and not just like going 7-4. They're going to need to go like a world-breaking 10-1 to get into the playoffs as that 6th seed. We'll see. Unfortunately, at this point, the Wolves have kind of proven that I wouldn't rely on them.
No, definitely not. I think, again, most likely it's a play-in. They pretty much locked it in. Before we get out of here, guys, again, if you really, we appreciate everyone joining too. We have a lot of people in here. I think there's over 1,800 people in here that came in to cry, to bond, everything like that. And if you want to cry some more, but hopefully we can turn those cries into smiles or something, come out to Headflyer Brewing on Friday, man. It's on the screen. For those listening, Headflyer Brewing, I'll be there. The Daily Wolves will be there. We're going to be watching the Timberwolves take on the Pelicans this Friday. Just come soak in with us and drink beer, and hopefully by the time we wake up from our drunkenness, the Timberwolves will be a playoff team, and you won't have to live through these painful games, man. So we're also partnered with Better, the best sports betting app out there. That is BETR in your app store. Search that up, and you can download Better, start sports betting today. Put in the promo code you see on the screen, the Daily SPN. That is all one word, the Daily, letter S, letter P, letter N, and get $200 deposit match on your first deposit by putting in our promo code. Start betting today on Better. We're also partnered with SeatGeek, the best ticket app out there. If you want to go get your tickets to a Taylor Swift concert, Matt's not on the live tonight, but Matt is a notorious Taylor Swift fan, and he loves when she comes into town. Go on SeatGeek, put our promo code, the Daily Wolves, in all one word on SeatGeek, and they're going to give you $20 off your SeatGeek order today. It's awesome having everybody on. Thanks for commenting. We love putting that on the screen for you guys, interacting with you guys. Until next time, as always, go Wolves.
Quick plug, Friday before your beer tasting, my guess is there's going to be Wolves availability. I try and post all the practice interviews and clips. People that aren't following me, I do try and at least like pull the cover back a little bit on the Wolves, but go Wolves, man.
His plug is on the screen for those watching right now. You can see it in the bottom corner there. So definitely go check Andrew out and give him a follow for Wolves content.